Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command World War II, World at War, after a little bit of a break. It's been a couple of weeks since we played this game. We've been playing mostly Panzer Corps on the channel, although yesterday we posted sort of one of our live streams from a couple of weeks back of Yes, Your Grace, and the day before that we had our War in the Pacific turn. But as you will recall, this is a long-running series. I think this is episode number 32 or something like that in this series, and it is October of 1942. The war is not going great. The one good thing that has happened is on the Western Front, Portugal entered the war, Spain declared war on the German side, and the Allies have invaded Europe and liberated Spain from the fascist regime there. Madrid has fallen to the Americans. The Spanish haven't actually surrendered yet, so they actually still control Gibraltar. But I'm hoping they surrender soon, as they are a minor ally. They only have 2 units left, a corps in Gibraltar holding that port, and a base that they took from the British very early on after Spain entered the war, and then a fighter unit here in Murcia. It's possible they have additional forces elsewhere in the Reich, perhaps on the Russian front, although I'm not 100% sure. Speaking of the Russian front, things are not going so well there. The Germans are on the doorstep to Moscow. We have some fortifications that we've built up, and we've put some troops in between them and Moscow. We have 2 corps here dug in at level 4. We have a corps south of Moscow dug in behind entrenchments, or not dug in, but will be dug in shortly. And then we have a slew of other units. But the Germans have a vast array of troops, both south of Moscow, based near Tula, and north of Moscow, taking Vyshny Volshak, which has actually taken one of the 2 rail lines into Leningrad. Leningrad, meanwhile, is on the verge of falling as well, as the Germans push deep into the north. Perhaps even more precarious is in the south, where German armor has a clear road towards Saratov and a easy road toward Kuybyshev, which is the alternate capital. If Moscow falls, the capital will move to Kuybyshev, or then eventually Perm, and both of these locations are completely open and exposed to German blitzkrieg. Saratov will probably fall next turn. As likely will Stalingrad. We have troops dug in there, but German forces are massing in and around Stalingrad, and I kind of expect that to fall. We have 1 troop blocking a breakout in the south near the Caspian Sea, near Erstrakhan. I imagine they will hold this turn, if only because the German focus will be on Stalingrad instead. Meanwhile, the Caucasus is largely gone. The Italians can march south toward Tbilisi and then flank toward Baku. We have 1 garrison unit at Grozny holding out, but it's facing an entire German army to its front, and that will also lead to the likely fall of Tehran, which could, in theory, give the Germans an avenue to advance into India, although the likelihood of that occurring soon is small. They'd have to advance through Tehran. They're not going to advance through the desert, so then they'd have to drive south into Isfahan, into Bushir, into Bandar Abbas, and then down a bad road into India. And I just don't think the AI will do that soon. Meanwhile, the Chinese front, things are going the Japanese have kind of finally broken through in central China. They've driven us back out of our fortifications directly to the west of Wuhan. They sort of turned our northern flank. They're approaching Sian and will be attacking the Chinese Communist forces there. We don't have sufficient troops to man the front. We have some British forces that have come across from India, and they have done some damage to the Japanese 37th Army here, to the Japanese 3rd Army here, but overall it's a bit of a dicey proposition for us. We have more British troops on the way, but terrain and supplies are going to make that a difficult ask. Meanwhile, the Japanese outmaneuvered us, or I was stupid and left Nanning open, so they're going to move into that city probably next turn, open up some supply for them, get into the rear of our troops here with a 2 Marine landing force that currently has no supply. They were landed without a port. We split them away from their headquarters unit, which is in Pakoi, but again, the situation is a bit dicey. I said Spain was the one bright spot. There's another bright spot. It's the Pacific. The American fleet has largely rested and reformed. It is ready for battle. We're just waiting for these ships to come out of dry dock after this next turn. And we've really battered the Japanese Navy. We've sunk 3 or 4 Japanese carriers. We've sunk 3 or 4 Japanese battleships. We do know they still have forces near Singapore. We see the carriers pop up out west here every once in a while, but they haven't actually even taken Singapore. and we know that they have another battleship or two. But overall, the Japanese fleet is not in great shape. If we actually take a look at the reports, we can see the Japanese are down to 14 naval vessels compared to 21 American and 30 British. So that's good news for us. Still a strong force. They could still definitely bloody us, and if we're unwise, they could definitely sink isolated units and even the odds. But sort of the impetus of the Japanese offensive in the Pacific, I think, is spent. The problem for us is they don't really need to take Australia. They don't really need to push deep into the heart of the Pacific. They've kind of got what they need. Really, if they crush China, and then Germany crushes Russia, that's kind of game over at that point, even if we limit their advances in the Pacific. Our best chance right now is hoping for the winter, right? So it is October. This next turn will be the end of October, so it probably won't be snowing yet, but it might be raining. We've already got sort of the muddy season kicking in. So our best chance on the Russian front is buying a couple of months in winter and allowing that time to allow a Allied invasion into southern France. We've already surrounded Bordeaux. We're advancing on the German forces there. I'm hoping that we can reduce Bordeaux to nothing after this next turn, and then we can advance into southern France, forcing the Germans to pull substantial forces out of Russia, although the damage may already be so great against the Russians as to be, unrepairable. We'll see, though. So that's the situation right now in October of 1942, and we'll see if we can figure out, a way to survive a little bit longer. I think the Americans have some new troops out here. They do, so there's a couple of new American armies. There's an American Special Forces unit as well. Still only one headquarters unit on the West Coast, but a couple of new units that have arrived, and a Canadian headquarters unit as well as an American garrison unit. We're working on flooding the continent with as many men as we can to really try and even the odds a bit. But if we look at the reports here, Germany has 110 land units. The Americans have 23 and the British have 44. The British have a substantial number of those in Asia. The Americans don't really. But even so, even if you just include Russia, the U.S., and the British all combined, there's still, a fraction of the German forces. They're still smaller than the German forces. That doesn't even include the Italian forces or the Japanese forces that we're all up against. And the air power we're way behind in, too. The only thing we have with air power is that's not counted in here is the fact that we have quite a few carriers on both sides that can help even the air war a bit. With that being said, that's enough of me rambling. I've already done my turn. Let's go ahead and move forward to the end of October, and we'll see what the AI turn has in store. Soviet morale is boosted by news of Allied forces in France. Okay, so since we crossed into France, that helps Soviet morale. That's good. Partisan activity in China. Maybe the Japanese will fail to garrison their rear adequately, and some partisan units will actually spring up and raise in their rear. Axis raiders are continuing to disrupt convoys between the U.S. and the U.K., Australia and the U.K., and Egypt and the U.K. Advanced fighter production or technology research is ongoing in Russia. And that's what we have for you right now. I didn't see any reports of rain, which could be disastrous for us if the Russian front is not rainy. If the Germans can bring their air force into play here, I think we're in some serious trouble. But we will see. Subs attacking our destroyers off the coast of Portugal. A pretty concerted effort against our destroyers there. I'm not sure why Vigo is still considered like German. The game treats some of the bases a little bit weird. I'm hoping my counterattacks in the center of China will delay the Japanese from continuing to push there. We really bloodied the army here. You can see they spent this turn reinforcing it. Another army up here is down to 5. They just railed one of their units away from Xi'an. Where to, I don't know. More subs off the coast of Lisbon. It is raining in Portugal. Now, the weather may change again before our next turn. Regardless of the winter, though... Oh, shit. The weather looks pretty damn clear over all of Russia. Bombing of Changsha in the south. One of our units just got taken out by Japanese tactical air there. I think that was the British Special Forces unit. German strategic and tactical bombers are hammering our forces on the front lines just in front of Leningrad. We have quite a few fighters in and around Moscow. Their tactical air force seems to be focused on Leningrad rather than Moscow. There was that one raid that looks like it finished off one British unit, or sorry, Russian unit. God, I need the Winter. General Winter, I need you. Okay, here's the attack on Stalingrad. The armor does its job, weakening the infantry. Meanwhile, the garrison unit to the west of Moscow is destroyed. Light armor in front of Moscow is destroyed. Saratov falls. It is raining in the south near Stalingrad. That might actually save Stalingrad. We'll see. I didn't see if the armor attacked there yet. I don't think it did. All right, so we just lost our engineers in front of Moscow, but frankly, that's okay. They were there as a as cannon fodder. I hate to say it, but they were there to die and to buy us another turn in front of Moscow down there. And they did their job. They ate up 3 infantry attacks. Some of these German units have 3 experience. Dear God. Meanwhile, that Russian army ate up 4 German attacks with barely any losses. Germans attack in front of Grozny, but they can't dislodge the garrison unit there. German army units are attacking south of Leningrad. They're not able to break through. That went well. I don't think their armored unit in Stalingrad moved yet. So they could still potentially finish Stalingrad off, but it may have held for another turn. We'll see. But I mean, there's just too many gaps in our line to fill at the moment. You know, we're sort of clustered around key objectives like Moscow and Stalingrad and Leningrad. Really, the heart of our army that's left is on the Moscow front. But we don't have the manpower to sort of hold the front in any sort of established line. And they have so much air power that whenever the spring comes, once this sort of rainy season ends and the winter comes, whenever spring comes, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. Their offensive power is greatly reduced during the winter, so that may help us, but I forgot that Spain still has an army unit on Palma as well as one in North Africa. Japanese troops on the Malay Peninsula suffering attrition damage. Chinese morale falls due to the lack of... Chinese morale falls due to the seizure of Nanning. French Indochina is alarmed by the Japanese conquest of Nanning. Another air unit is formed in India. Survivors from Nanning reformed the units in Chongqing. I'm glad to get more free Chinese troops. And supplies being hindered to Australia. Chinese international trade is impacted by the loss of Nanning because it cuts our rail line off to Indochina, which would have brought supply in. So presumably that hurts our forces there. That's a lot of destroyed units. The Russians lost the 26th Army, the Premysl garrison, the 1st Light Tanks, the Brest-Litovsk garrison, and the 1st Engineers. Not too many important units, though. The Engineers hurt, but they're also, at this point, another turn in front of Moscow's worth it. China lost the CX Corps. Only 1 unit killed in China, several badly damaged. Intelligence is giving us location of enemy units, which really doesn't help me out all that much. It's like, great, so they have garrisons. Good to know. So I think one of the reasons Spain isn't surrendering yet is they still have a fair number of units left that are alive that kind of bump up their ability to resist. So like when your capital falls, your likelihood of surrender depends on some factors. Okay. How are these guys not dying? Probably because we have, like, no supply down there. Okay. Didn't we have more transports coming with garrisons? I don't think they're there yet. Nice. Special forces get a lick in there. Alright. Well, that sucks. I was hoping our maritime bombers would do some damage against their subs. My destroyers are all beat to hell. Meanwhile, Bordeaux has been reinforced. My advanced troops... Ah, shit, it's raining in Bordeaux. Well, Bordeaux probably won't fall this turn. Alright, these guys are dug in, so I'm going to attack here. Oh, nice. We did inflict some casualties. Alright, our mechanized American troops that have decent supply can attack here pretty effectively. They do a bit of damage there. Pull them back. Move these Canadian tanks up. Yeah! We took Bordeaux! Alright, Bordeaux is ours. Alright, these are Canadian troops, BEF, British, American, Canadian. Alright, we'll move the headquarters units up to try and bump supply. We'll get a little bit of supply coming into Bordeaux as well, since it is a port. Alright. Reinforce the units that can reinforce. For whatever reason, a lot of these troops cannot reinforce. Alright, these guys need to move. Where do we want to move these guys? Why can't I rail them to Madrid? Okay. Alright, so we've got plenty of troops around Zaragoza. There will be no rising there. Burgos and Salamanca both have troops between them. Madrid still has a Portuguese corps there, which I'd rather on the front line, but... You know, whatever it is, it's... Alright, we'll move these guys slowly toward Madrid. Okay. Mine. Oh. They're stationed in a mine. Okay. All right, so we took Bordeaux. We're driving north into southern France now. Presumably the Germans are going to reinforce down here. But Bordeaux is an alternate industrial center, or alternate capital, I think, for the French. So that's good news for us. It's not a morale center, though. But now we can advance on Paris from the south. We'll upgrade these Portuguese troops with mobility as well. Just trying to see if there's anything else I can do with these guys. A little bit frustrated that we can't take these guys out. Like, they're level 1 Spanish air units and they have 2 supply. You're telling me we can't do anything? No, nothing. Can't do anything. I really need to get this British fleet. All these destroyers would be really helpful if we could get them out of the frickin' Med, but we can't as long as Gibraltar holds. And until these units get destroyed, it's unlikely it's going to fall. Anyway, so that's a good result in Spain. I think that kind of does it for Spain. We do need to move these garrison troops forward. Alright, so I'll move the cruiser there as a sort of scout, if you will. We'll move that American garrison unit in. This Canadian unit will move up to Ponta Delgada as a, you know, slow stepping stone to the front there. These American troops will move to Bermuda. I don't think I have a base for these guys. I do have that British heavy cruiser unit I keep forgetting about in the south. I'm going to take a risk. Well, here's the thing. There's only one. Yeah, I'm not going to take a risk. I'll throw these guys on transports, but I'm not going to actually risk them at sea. Meanwhile, the British cruiser down here in the South Pacific is going to sail east. I don't think we have anything else down there, do we? I mean, we have a Brazilian garrison, but I don't have a use for it right now. We have a couple of other garrisons in Central America, but I think that'll do it here. Can these guys reinforce? They can, so we'll reinforce some of these destroyers. I mean, what's the... I don't know if I need to upgrade my battleships at this point in time. Like, why? Alright, so... move that carrier back to Britain. Actually, we can put some ships in Biscay now. Move these heavy cruisers back to Ireland, just to get out of potential enemy submarine attacks. Move all these guys adjacent to this port, because that does influence supply. Should probably move these guys adjacent to Gibraltar as well. Vigo still Axis. How is that possible? Anyway. Like how... None of these guys have enough supply. These guys have like 7 and 8 supply. They should be able to upgrade. I mean, really, we need another headquarters unit. This turn we've got an American destroyer that arrives, 2 Russian armies, and an Indian anti-aircraft unit. Oh god, that unit will be a godsend in China if we can get it in there. Reinforce that armor first before we send it in. Meanwhile, the situation on the front in Siam is increasingly in our favor. Oh, come on, Japanese Marines, you're done. There we go. Japanese lose their Kota Baru force. So, the Malay Peninsula does not look like it will fall. I don't know how to get troops safely to Madagascar. The game highly recommended I do that, but it's kind of a little bit frustrating because I don't know how I'm supposed to do that. I mean, well, let's do this. Let's try and throw these guys on transports. Yeah, they can't land here, so I guess I can move them to Dar es Salaam. Then I can throw them on amphibious from there, maybe. Although I don't know if garrisons can do amphibious. So we'll see. Do we have a... We do have... No, that's... Belgian Congo. I thought we had like a French corps down here, but I may have moved them to North Africa. Meanwhile, the troops in China, the British troops, they can reinforce. They've got supplies. Alright, we're going to move these British troops north here. I don't want to move them directly into Siam. They'll take too much of a morale hit force marching up there. Apparently these guys get an experience core because they're reformed troops. The interesting thing is these Japanese troops still don't have supply, though. But my troops can't attack them because the Japanese troops are too good. Okay, so we're driving the Japanese headquarters unit back. We'll hold at Canton, hopefully for another turn. We'll try and reinforce north along the line here. Move these troops up toward the Wu Gorge. And here, the terrain favors us trying to block them there. Meanwhile, the troops in the north are a bit of a concern. They could make a lunge for Langkao, and I could definitely lose that. Reinforce these British Special Forces. Undo that. Hold in Changsha. Alright, nice. They badly shot up the Japanese army down here. Chinese actually still have a little bit of money left. Spend it on a couple of reinforcements, hopefully to help plug the gap as more British and Commonwealth troops move in. I really wonder if reinforcing these ships is a smart move. We can do the 2 for the battleship there without too much risk, I think. 2 cruisers, destroyer. Really, we could make a move on the British Navy from the, or on the Japanese Navy from the British perspective as well. I don't know where the Japanese fleet is. That's where intel would come in handy, is if it told me where the Japanese fleet was. Is Kwajalein empty? It was last turn. It is. Can we force them in the land? We can. Okay, nice. So we took Kwajalein. That's a great result. We'll use the Marines on Pearl to maybe move on another objective. Taro would be a good national morale objective. Any VTOC as well. Maybe it'll draw the Japanese fleet out a little bit. Pull the American fleet back inside sort of our safety area here. We'll move it up. Move our escort carriers, our jeep carriers, which are coming online as well. We don't have much in the way of destroyers left, but our carriers should provide a good amount of anti-aircraft or anti-submarine protection. We still have the 1 here. We're going to reinforce it, though. I'm going to move this heavy cruiser into port in Honolulu. And then we've got 2 jeep carriers that are coming online this turn from the U.S. West Coast. Both of them have level 2 air groups. We should have an Essex coming online, too, soon. So, Kwajalein has fallen. I mean, I don't really see that as an important thing to do to take these islands the way the game is structured. Maybe it helps from a supply perspective across the oceans. I guess supply is managed in the water here. So maybe it will matter. I've never really done amphibious operations all that much, but Kwajalein should be nice. Secondary supply. Roan Namur is also secondary supply, so this sort of central point in the islands. So we did some damage to the Japanese landing force there. We might even be able to, one would wonder. I wonder how effective our air units would be. Oh, I can't do that. Doesn't look like I can change their... Well, I can do it there. Can we hit from here? Nice. So we might even be able to wear them down a little bit till there's nothing left, and we can just, you know, take the base easily. It'd be great if it was true. Let's move the carriers. Switch their mode off. Apparently when you move past a certain point, you can't change the mode off. Okay, so that's a good result there. Meanwhile, our Australian forces at Port Moresby still hanging in there. Upgrade this heavy cruiser's anti-aircraft defenses because that's important. That should be the case for all of our ships. Meanwhile, we've got this large force in Australia, and it's kind of like, what are we gonna do with it? We even have an American headquarters unit here. We could throw another unit into New Guinea, but it wouldn't really matter all that much because there's just no bases there that matter. So I'm more inclined to try and go for, like, retaking of an island somewhere. Oh, I didn't realize the Americans had a big tank unit out this way on Pago Pago. 3rd Marine Tank Division, I guess. We'll have to figure out what we want to do with them. Level 3, even. Probably want to go for Guadalcanal. Although, maybe not. I mean, Guadalcanal is threatening our supply line to Australia, so that matters, I guess. Australian headquarters. Do we want to move it to Port Moresby? I'm just not sure what the right method of counterattack is. The one turn the British had a fair amount of money left over. Again, we probably want to pull these troops out of North Africa, but the one thing is that the Vichy government is something we have to be mindful of, because if they declare war, then we can't just leave troops away. Also, I frankly don't have the strength right now or the frontage right now to flow a ton more troops into Europe. An Italian invasion might be intriguing if we have evidence that the Germans start to pull troops out of Italy, but right now we don't, so they still have, I'm guessing this is scripted, but I'm guessing they have 3 units here in fortifications in front of Rome. We could try and land behind Rome. Oh, my air wing's gone there, so that doesn't do us any good. Yeah, we'll have to see. I shouldn't have done that either, because now it'll be exposed to enemy subs. But, yeah. Okay, so the British still have a little bit of money left over. I'm inclined to keep that, because we're going to need that next turn. We already fought the Chinese front. We looked at the Pacific theater. So the main thing that we still have to do is the Russian theater, which is where things are the most grim. So Stalingrad held out for another turn. Good for you boys. You're going to die next turn. These Soviet troops out near Arikistan or something like that held out for another turn. We'll reinforce the troops in front of Kuybyshev, which is the alternate capital. German armor penetrated as far as Saratov. Reinforce the troops everywhere that we can. We're not going to move anybody that we don't have to move. Let's try and hit these German armored units with our tactical air. Nice. 2 hits there, I'll take that. Even with the casualties that our air units suffered. We're also, I mean, we are inflicting some on the enemy fighters. No damage there. Should I take the 3 hits there? Okay, so troops hanging out there. Upgrade all the units we can. Anti-aircraft defense is very important as well. Alright, so where do we send our troops? The south is important, but not. Like, it's important in a sense, but it's also not where we're going to lose the war. Like, they could take Stalingrad, we get a big national morale hit, but then, okay, so they break out east to where? Kuybyshev is a concern, but it'll probably take them a day or two to drive north. They do have armor here, but I wonder about their supply line and their ability to stay effectively in action there. Part of me wants to operate this headquarters unit away, Vorshilov, just to get another headquarter unit up near Moscow to increase the sort of readiness of those troops. Alright, so I badly crippled the 21st Panzers. That should help. At least weaken the attack in the north a bit. Part of me wonders if we're better off moving an army south here. Maybe pivoting these guys in here. We'll lose our entrenchments, but we'll buy a turn to entrench new army size units. I don't want to put new units on the front. I'm assuming if I move these guys forward here, I can deploy them here. And that will be away. You know, we are shifting some units, but they're core units instead of army units, right? So now we've got 2 army units in the south in front of Moscow, as well as 2 army units on the west in front of Moscow. I think we'll put the other army unit up here north near Leningrad. And we'll put a U.S. destroyer in New York City. So we still have some money left. Some of these destroyed units. We could buy 2 new corps. Could we buy an army? We could buy 1 new army. I think I'll go with the 2 new corps. Because they're replacement corps, so we get them cheaper. So the Soviets will buy 2 new replacement corps. They're right here. We also have Soviet Special Forces coming up in November. So more Soviet reinforcements on the way. The Americans, I mean, we don't really have a lot of tanks. We really need more headquarters units, so I'm kind of tempted to just wait. Do we have any more coming? Doesn't look like it. We have an armored unit coming early next year. We could afford a heavy tank with anti-aircraft. Not mobility, though. The headquarters unit takes only 3 turns to produce, though, so I could spend the money. How much is a headquarter? It's 364 with our current bonuses. Well, actually, it depends on the general. The crappy generals are cheaper. We almost can afford one now. We're just a little bit shy. I think what I'll do then in that case is the tanks take longer to make. The lead time on those is 5 turns rather than 3. So I'm going to go with an anti-aircraft level 3 tank for the Americans. The British and the French are going to hang on to their money, I think, unless we need to pour the British money into some research somewhere. We're at level 3 tanks. We can't move it up another notch without more money. Command and control could go up. It's probably an important thing to have. The British aren't even researching anything right now. Good God. The Russians got their infantry tech up to 2, which is good. Advanced fighters are almost to 2, which is way behind, but still better. Armored's at 2, which is behind, but not disastrously so yet. I mean, the British need to spend something on research. I don't know, though. Probably command and control, I guess. Okay. So that's going to do it for this turn. Spain still hasn't fallen, but we have taken Bordeaux, and we are advancing into southern France on a shoestring mission with only 2 headquarters units and a absolute traffic jam. Hopefully the Germans haven't diverted too many troops to France yet. I did see them pull some troops via rail. I don't know if they pulled them away from the front or not. I don't have a good enough intelligence and, you know, recon. I can't really see far enough into German territory to know. But that is something we need to be aware of and mindful of. Yeah, so that's the situation right now. American garrisons coming ashore. More troops inbound. We'll get some Canadian HQ next turn to help with the Canadian armor here. Help keep them supplied. I'm not sure if we have any other Canadian forces here. I thought we might have had an infantry unit, but I can't remember. But, yeah. So that's the situation in November of 42. Let's pray for snow in Russia. The turn didn't go as bad as I thought it would. Saratov kind of sucks as they're kind of racing out there behind our flank. But Stalingrad held on for another turn, continues to tie up large numbers of German forces. Same is true of Leningrad up here. Just look at the number of troops they're committing to versus the number that we have. And then Moscow is the one concentration of Soviet force that could theoretically do something. We're trying to dig in. Again, I know you guys are probably yelling at me for moving these guys because they lose their entrenchment. But I'm hoping for snow, and even if these guys die, we'll have stronger units behind them. So we push the front out away from Moscow for, you know, another turn, for another hex. And then these better equipped, better trained, better units, frankly, in the rear will be dug in front of Moscow. The 1st Guards Army is in Moscow. It's at level 3 entrenchment. It's working its way up. We've got anti-aircraft guns near Moscow. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in November of 42. We'll see how things pan out in our next video. Until our next video, guys, I hope you guys are enjoying the series. It is back once again. I'm not sure what the actual schedule for this looks like. I still want to do more Panzer Corps 2, but I've run into a little bit of a wall where I'm at the Battle of Moscow in Panzer Corps 2, and it's so difficult, borderline impossible. I'm not making any progress at all. And so I don't, you know, you lose if you lose the Battle of Moscow. There's no sort of dynamic element to the campaign where you get to, like, then try something, you know, different, right? Like the here's what happens if you get repulsed scenario. So I'm not really sure what to do with that series. I don't want it to end, but I also don't know what to do with it. But leave your thoughts below, as always. And until next time, guys, this is the Historical Gamer saying once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.